Welcome to Scorched Earth. This is going to be a general reading for the sign of Cancer for the month of February. It's good for Sun, Moon and Ascendant signs, but if you don't know what your Moon and Ascendant signs are, have a look in the description box below. There's a link down there that will help you find your birth chart. The site's pretty good for explaining why those signs are important as well, so it's sometimes worth going back and watching the videos for your Moon and Ascendant signs. You'll get a better picture of what's going on with you if you look at all of them together. What else? Thank you for your subscribes, your likes, your shares, your comments, your messages, your donations. I deeply appreciate every single bit of interaction that I have with you. You really fill me up every month. You've got no idea. It's awesome. Please continue. What else? Oh, Mercury retrograde. We've got one coming up in February. I mean, they happen multiple times a year, so you know it's a thing. Don't panic about it. It's an opportunity to deal with things that you haven't maybe fully closed out before, and sometimes you have closed them out, and sometimes they just come back for you to double check that it's absolutely not what you want. Check that you've learned the lesson, you know, that sort of thing. So that can sometimes be people coming back. Sometimes it can be a resurgence in an emotional state, you know, where you thought you dealt with some sort of emotional situation and then those feelings rise up again and you're like, oh, actually that still needs a bit of work. Or it can just be situations, you know. It's not anything to panic about. It's happening for you, not to you. So just do remember that. Just don't start anything new if you can possibly help it. And if you have to start something new, like a job or a relationship or something like that, make sure you scrutinise the small print. Or what small print you'd have in a relationship, I don't know. But you know. So, with all that said, let's get some cards on the table. Could I please have 3 cards for Cancer for February, please? 3 cards for Cancer for February. Oh, nice. First card we've got is the Chariot. That's the card of Cancer in the Major Arcana. It's number 7. Strong presentation. I like that. 2 more. Fuck. Well, that's interesting. The Moon tried to come out there as well. That's the other card of Cancer in the Major Arcana, along with Judgment and Death. That's Scorpio. Both of those are Scorpio. You might be dealing with Scorpio. Who knows? Right. Let's try again. 2 of Swords. Got a decision to make. But we'll get into it. But you don't really have a decision to make anyway. Right, one more card. What's coming towards Cancer in February, please? 9 of Cups. It's wish fulfillment. It's water card. At the bottom of the deck, we've got the Magician. It's really powerful energy right there. It talks about real conscious manifestation in the 3D environment. So you're very powerful at the moment, Cancer, whether you realise it or not. And for some reason, as I've said that, I don't think that you do realise quite how powerful you are. So pay attention to that, because what you think, you manifest. What you speak, you manifest. So if you're going around and not practicing gratitude for what you have, you will manifest that into your life. You know, more things not to be grateful for, because that's how it works. Let's get some clarifiers. Why is the Chariot here for Cancer, please? 4 of Swords. That's interesting. Slightly conflicting energy. And 6 of Swords. Okay, let's see where this is going. Right, why is the 2 of Swords, please? 10 of Cups. Queen of Wands. I think this is going to be quite a swift reading. There's a 9 of Cups here, please, for Cancer. 5 of Swords. There's the 9 of Cups here. Hold on. Okay. And the 5 of Rings. Yeah, okay. At the bottom of the deck, we've got the Sun. That's the most positive card in the deck. It's the card of Leo. It talks about being in touch with your inner child, amongst other things. But in any reading where the Sun is present, particularly as a shadow card, as it is at the bottom of this deck, casts everything in a very positive light. And so I'm going to bring you back again to the fact that you should be focusing on the positives in your existence at the moment, because what you think, what you speak, you will create, right? So the first card you've got is the Chariot, and like I said, this is your card, so I'm glad to see it here. This card is all about the self, right? It's about self-determination, it's about self-governance, it's about balancing the duality of whatever you've got going on inside, right? Usually it's depicted with 2 sphinxes, and the charioteer, which is you, is sat in the chariot, and he doesn't have any reins. The point is, he doesn't need the reins because he controls these 2 beasts, mythical sphinxes as they are in a standard deck, with the power of his mind. And this one is horses, right? 2 horses, and they look to be made almost of water. As we know in the tarot, water is symbolic of feelings and emotions and stuff like that. So there's a real sense here in the recent parts of you really starting to get a hold of your emotional state, right? Pulling everything into balance, balancing yourself, and working out what is important to you and moving forwards in that way. In order for this to be necessary, I feel like there must have been some sort of internal turmoil beforehand, some internal conflict. There's been things that have been bothering you recently. And I would say, I don't know, I'm hearing in the last couple of months, right? Like there's been stuff bubbling away under the surface, and you've kind of felt like you had lost control of your reactions to things. Like everything was coming in on top of you. It was oppressive. I get a very oppressive feel about this. But you've got on top of it recently, and you're starting to feel much more emotionally balanced, which is awesome. We like that. The 2 cards that you've got to clarify are the 4 of Swords and the 6 of Swords, right? These are both cards of the mental. It's about what's going on in the head. Because it's swords. So it's communication, it's words, it's thoughts, it's thought patterns. You know, it's how we speak to others, but it's also how we speak to ourselves when we're thinking, you know, coming back to this manifestation thing, right? Don't just be conscious of your words, be conscious of your thoughts, be conscious of your thought patterns, and identify that little voice that holds you back, knitters in the background, right? Because that's all it is doing, it's holding you back. And when you consciously acknowledge it and then tell it to go away, it's dealt with. If you leave it burbling along underneath, it starts to affect everything else. So the 4 of Swords is a break, usually. It's a moment of repose. And coming as it does after the 3 of Swords, sometimes it's that withdrawal period, you know, after a heartbreak or something like that. We kind of retreat into ourselves and we try and process it and make sense of what it is that's just happened, you know, how we actually feel about it. But this card's slightly different. I see there's 4 swords, but they're all turned inwards towards one rose. And it's interesting that this rose here is the focal point for this card. And it's coming out to talk about a card of the self, like being in complete control of yourself. Feels like you were pushed to breaking point by external words, external judgments, those kind of things. It was all focused on you, and you got to breaking point before you kind of hold yourself back and went, no, stop, reassess this situation. Where am I going? What am I doing? And I being the important part of what I'm saying there, you know, what am I doing? Not what is everybody else doing? What am I supposed to be doing? You know, now what do I want to do? What should I do for my betterment? And the answer is you moved away from something. Like maybe you cut ties with something altogether. I find the arrangement of swords on here really interesting as well, because these 4 swords here are very similar to the 4 swords that sit in the corners of the cards there, and we've got one big one right in the middle. It's almost like you went from being the rose here with all of this attention, and it feels negative, all this negative attention pushed onto you. So just bringing out your fucking machete and just splitting it all off and going, no. You know, there's been a hefty chop. And maybe this is people. Maybe there are some people that you've moved away from, but there's certainly some sense of a stressful situation that you have now detached yourself from, and you're looking for calmer waters. Like, you don't want drama, you don't want stress, and you have actively moved away from those things, right? So this is your recent past, and we come into the future. No, we don't. We come into the present. I'm all over the place today. I feel completely baked for some reason. I've got no idea why. Just since I came in here about an hour ago, I've just been like... Anyway, got the 2 of Swords. Now this talks about making a decision about something, except that it doesn't, right? Because it's a 2, so it's internal, and it's about weighing up 2 particular options in a choice, right? And trying to decide the way forward to go. And the idea is that the swords, to all intents and purposes, are identical. You know, they look the same. They weigh the same. They've got no nicks in the blade. You know, the condition is the same. And she's there, thinking hard about which one of these swords she's going to choose between. But the important part of this is that she's blindfolded. She's got the moon in the background there, and she's got the water in the background there. She has her back to them. Right? She's covered her eyes, so she cannot see these things. She can't perceive them with her eyes. She's literally turned herself around. This is water. This is emotion. This is feeling. The moon up here is intuition. It's the subconscious. It's all of those kind of things. So she's depriving herself of the possibility of using these really powerful tools in her toolbox. That is her emotional response to things and her intuitive response to things, to assist in making this decision. And I feel like the reason that she's done that is because actually the decision has already been made. She's choosing not to consciously acknowledge that decision having been made by blinding herself to it and pretending it's a purely intellectual decision. And this is the state that you're in at the moment. The 2 cards that we've got to clarify are the 10 of Cups and the Queen of Wands. Right. So whenever we have a decision card, and this is one, and the Lovers is another in the Major Arcana, right? I like to see a card either side, picking one or the other, right? And the first one that you've got is the 10 of Cups, right? And that is supposed to be one of the most positive cards in the deck, right? It talks about complete emotional fulfillment. It's usually got, you know, a couple on it and some kids running around and a dog, and there's, you know, cups everywhere, and there's bright sunshine and rainbows usually. Yeah, and it's just a snapshot of emotional perfection, you know, where nothing is bothering you and it's just perfect. But this one is not like that. It's quite dark, actually. And what I'm really drawn to is the fact that the 4 skulls, as it is in this deck, the Cups of Skulls, all have eyes painted on over the third eye space right here. Right? There's a knowing here. There's a psychic knowing that you have, and I suspect it's why you're in this state at the moment, right? It feels like the choice is between this and the Queen of Wands, right? And this should be perfect, it should be great, it should be all of these things, but actually it's dark and there's fucking nooses all over it as well, right? The Four of Cups, and there are 4 cups, 4 skulls in the middle here, talks about rejection. It talks about taking things for granted. Yeah. It seems like you've been offered the possibility, or somebody's tried to sell you the possibility of a 10 of Cups situation, right? And it should be good. It's like all the component ingredients are there. It should be a good thing. But there's something that intuitively you know is wrong about this situation. You might be choosing not to look at it at the moment, but deep down, you know that it's there, right? 4 nooses. There's nothing much emotionally fulfilling about that. And it could well be a relationship. I mean, obviously it's 10 of Cups, complete emotional fulfillment. But I'm looking at these 2 skulls on the side here, and they're both full of flowers, the skulls. One's up and one's down. Yeah? One of them has all of this stuff falling out, rather than being upright and holding it in its head. Has overwhelming sense that it should be right. There's everything about it makes it look like it's really good. But somewhere in your gut something's pinging about and it's like, maybe you desperately want this. You desperately want it, and that's why you're choosing not to look at this. Right? You're ignoring the red flags, is what you're doing, if that is the case. But take it as it resonates to you. I mean, this doesn't have to be a relationship. This could be anything with a level of emotional investment in it. So it could be a new job. It could be all sorts of things. It could be any kind of situation where there's an emotional investment. But there are red flags going on, and you're choosing to ignore them right now. And I just want to say, like, you should never ignore your gut about things. The other side of the choice is the Queen of Wands. Now, this is the Fire Queen. So it could be Leo, Aries or Sagittarius person, potentially, who's involved. But if it's not, like, for me, the Queen of Wands, of all of the queens, is the most fiercely independent, right? You could make an argument for the Queen of Swords being that way, but I always see her as a not very far away from the King of Swords, right? They're always knocking around together. They consult each other on matters that they have been consulted on. There's a great degree of interaction between them both. And they're both depicted as quite static, right? So I feel like they're in the same kind of environment all the time. Yeah. The Queen of Wands, for me, is almost psychotically independent, actually. I've used that phrase to describe myself sometimes, right? She is the counterpart of the King of Wands, but neither of them are particularly happy about sitting still and stagnating in the same place, right? They have to go off and have their own adventures. And when they come back together, it's a great big passionate meeting where they just empty, their heads of all the experiences that they've had, and they enjoy each other's energy and they enjoy each other's company before they ping off and they have another adventure, right? I get that sense really, really strongly from this. She's confident. She's got high self-esteem, right? She knows her worth. She's comfortable being by herself. In fact, she needs to be by herself at times. She needs to go and experience things for herself. She's not... There's no sense of a being chained to a relationship with this one, right? She lives in the moment. This is what I'm trying to get at, right? She lives in the moment. But look how she's turned away from this 10 of Cups right here, right? This feels like it's a choice. Because the other thing that this Queen of Wands indicates she's the witch. Of all the queens, she's the witch, right? She's psychic rather than intuitive, I would say. She's usually got a black cat, depicted there somewhere, right? She knows things and she's strong and she lives in her own truth. And this feels a little bit like being blinkered and refusing to acknowledge the truth of things. Whatever the water and the moon is trying to tell you, you're ignoring. Because your choice is this or this. I'm going to pull a couple more cards for that because I find that really interesting. By blindfolding yourself and holding up these two swords, you're basically procrastinating on the decision. You're avoiding, the necessity of making the decision. But there will come a point where you have to. Another card for this, please. Okay, it's about 16 now. Right. Try again. This is really interesting. Right. I read an acronym for witch once that I really, really liked. It was woman in total control of herself, and that's what I'm put in mind of here. Right. There are worse things than being by yourself. I absolutely assure you of that. So the two cards that have come out to clarify these two cards are the Knight of Pentacles and the Sun. Right? It's the second time the Sun's been out right here. Now the Knight of Pentacles talks about, he's the slowest knight in the deck, right? He gets the job done because he's methodical. But he's got no drama, he's got no style, really. He just plods. And this is how these cards are sitting for me here, right? So this one, plodding in this emotional situation, which is actually not going to be anywhere near as fulfilling as is being sold to you, or perhaps as you would wish it to be. And then we've got the Sun coming up under the Queen of Wands. Right? Card of Leo, more fire energy, more living in the moment energy. Right? But look how these two are in opposite directions. They're going opposite ways, right? This is incredible positivity. It's lightness of spirit. It's all of these things. Even just the colours on these cards, completely different. This is quite dark. This is quite stagnant. This is quite, slow. It's earth energy. Always is slow. But just as the Queen was facing away, look how they're facing in the same direction, and they're going that way, which, as the cards sit on my table, is towards the future. This is about going backwards. Yeah. So now as I'm looking at it here, and it's going backwards towards this situation, perhaps this is a resurgence of this situation, one that really got on top of you for a while, that you then kind of reasserted yourself over, and you were like, cool, okay, I'm good, but now here it is, and it's back, and it wants to drag you backwards. Right. The last card that you've got, your future, for what's coming up for you in February, is the Nine of Cups. That's really interesting because it's a step down from the Ten of Cups, but they couldn't have more different energies than that. Right? This one is dark, and this one is dangerous, and this one has red flags written all over it. This one is just content, right? So even though it's 9 and not a 10, I feel like it's a much more gentle, much more comfortable energy for you, right? And for me, the 9s particularly talk about being comfortable by yourself. Like the 9 of Pentacles is absolutely the card of self-sufficiency and independence, all that kind of thing. 9 of Swords talks about that awful grief and despair that you experience by yourself in the middle of the night, that keeps you up, gives you insomnia, all that kind of thing. The Nine of Cups is about being happy in your own emotional space, right? With just you. Right there. There's a bee at the bottom of the card, and I love this massive bee down there. For me, bees talk about industry and work, hard work, but they also talk about success. You know, she's got a happy expression on her face, and she's holding one cup very easily. There are no nooses or anything like this, and all of these cups are the right way up. Right? They're all there, ready to hold water, ready to hold the emotion and the feeling and things like that. It's content. But it's content in solitude, and I feel like that's the important thing. And then we've got these two cards here. 2 5s. Right? 5 of Swords and the 5 of Rings, or the 5 of Pentacles as it is in a standard deck. Now, all 5s talk about change, uncomfortable change, conflict, sometimes competition. But they talk about things shifting, right? Shifting around you. And I feel like this is a rejection of everything that's come before. And that's how you're sitting in this energy here, right? So 5 of Swords. Like, the thing that always strikes me about this, right? And we're back to this swords imagery, right? It sits in between these two. 4 swords on the side. We've got that on each card. You know, maybe there are 4 people, 4 particular people who've been giving you grief. Maybe there are 4 different situations. You know, right? The number 4 is important here somewhere, right? Either side. This one in the middle, the biggest one, the strongest one, it's snapped clean in half, right? It's cutting off communication with someone, is what it is. Because, and quite often, the 5 of Swords to me talks about, you know, really difficult conversations where routing, really, you know. There's little conversational about it. It's like huge arguments and things like that. It's just snapped. That's you cutting off communication, you refusing to engage with these anymore. You know, I think you were the focus of it here. And then here, you brought your own great big machete and you maybe chopped a few people down a little bit, brought them down to where they were, you know, more manageable. But ultimately, the way forward is non-engagement. It's refusing to engage altogether rather than engaging stronger and more viciously than they are, right? And then we've got the 5 of Rings, and this usually talks about poverty and abandonment, you know, lack of any description, or a fear of those. And I feel like this contentment that you feel here is deliberately putting yourself into an isolated position by refusing to engage with whoever these are. You know, I just keep coming back to the fact that these 4 swords are either side, you know, and then there's you, snapping it. It's been like, Some people just can't be reasoned with, and I think maybe that's what you're starting to discover. You know, you can be logical and reasonable, which, you know, with swords it'd be all day long. If somebody is committed to not understanding you, it doesn't matter what you say, they will choose not to understand the sense in what you're saying. And when you come across that situation, the only thing that you can do is to stop engaging, you know, go full grey rock about the situation. Isolate yourself from them and move on and put yourself into this here, which is a much nicer energy than, you know, the rest of it. Well, I think 10 of Wands, yeah. One more. No, it's just this one. Yeah, so we've got the 10 of Wands, right? And the 10 of Wands is a card of burden. It's a card of things being too difficult. And I think there's going to be a snapping point for you, right? because this has come out directly under here. At some point in February, there is going to be an argument. There's going to be some sort of verbal sparring. There's going to be something. And you're just going to realise right there that not only are these people committed to not understanding you, but that the labour that you are expending in trying to make someone who is committed to not understand you is too much. It's too hard, right? And not only that, like, they do understand. They do get it. They just don't want to, right? Committed to not understanding you. That's the thing. One more card for this, please. Fuck. So much they want to say here, my God. Eight of Pentacles, yeah, I mean, just get your head down. You've got work to do. You know, maybe you own your own business or something like that, but you've got things to keep you occupied. You don't need to be bothered with this anymore. Like, this is taking up too much space in your head, and it is time that you emptied it of things that don't need to be there. At the bottom of the deck, we've got the Wheel of Fortune. It's the card of Sagittarius, but it also talks about the wheel turning and things actually starting to go much, much better for you in future. We've got the Queen of Swords underneath. If you chop out these things that are causing you grief now, that are taking up space in your head that really don't need to, you know, you're going to find an incredible level of peace if you do this. Concentrate on your work, you know, whatever that is. Absolutely. Right, I'm going to leave it there, Cancer, because that seems pretty straightforward. And I actually talked for longer than I was expecting to, given the cards that came out anyway. As ever, if the message resonated, I'd love it if you would, you know, like the video or leave a comment or something like that. And if you haven't subscribed, I'd love it if you did. And I will see you in about a fortnight for the mid-month. Okay, take care.